How do you see Trump's approach to the UK compared to his first term?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it'll be similar to the first term. President Trump is very fond of the UK. He's always been on the UK's side. Whereas during the Biden years, you had a president who was very much, sometimes critical of the UK, but also in many respects, favoring the EU, favoring Ireland, and on occasion even disrespecting the leadership here in the UK. So I think the President Trump coming back into office will be ultimately better for the UK, and I think you'll see that without, again, there'll be some hiccups, and I think that given that, the leadership in the UK is from a party of the left, and President Trump's, party from the right, there might be some missteps, but I think generally speaking, President Trump very much favors the UK.
And you mentioned Trump being fond of the UK. I think his mum was Scottish. I think that's
Right.
right.
That's
And
right. Yeah.
and also he has a golf course
Yeah.
in Scotland, so that shows his affection for the UK. So how serious are these risks of new tariffs on UK exports, would you say?
Yeah, my guess at this point is it's not very serious, and there's a few reasons for that. One, we've already talked about his fondness for the UK. Two is the UK doesn't have any real, risks of, allowing illegal migrants into the US like we had with Canada and Mexico. You don't have a problem of not committing enough resources to defense and security. The UK is at about 2.5% of GDP. That's, significantly higher than Germany and France, but also higher than the average in the EU or in NATO specifically. And the third thing, and this is probably the most important, is right now the UK has a very small trade surplus with the US. So it's not meaningful. Whereas the EU has a $230 billion trade surplus. China is at around 300 billion. And that, of course, Canada and Mexico had significant trade surpluses. So I don't think the president has any reason to slap tariffs on the UK. There might be some small things like the Chagos Islands, which is really a disaster for both the UK and the US. If that goes forward, I hope the president stops that. So there's some things on the margin, but generally speaking, the issues that would trigger President Trump to slap tariffs on, like you saw with the threats on Canada and Mexico, of course, on Colombia and potentially on the EU, I don't think those really rank in terms of the UK.
So let's talk about the Reform Party. This is a
Yeah.
a relatively new party. It used to be the Brexit Party. Before that,
Yeah.
it was UKIP, led by a very charismatic leader called Nigel Farage, who was very close to President Trump. I think it's probably the nearest to your party, the Republican Party in the
Yeah.
UK. What are the parallels and differences between Farage's movement in the UK and Trump's party?
I think it's more similarities than differences. So the Reform Party here in the UK has really argued for moving back to traditional conservative values. And I think the so-called Conservative Party, the Tories, have not. They have not governed in their 14 years of power. They sort of governed from the center, even the center left in many respects, not the center right. So I think, Nigel Farage, who's full disclosure, a friend of mine, I think he's got a great relationship with President Trump, but also his party is aligned with the policies of President Trump. I would also say that the Conservative Party, the Tories, have a choice to make right now. I think they're moving much to the right and they're moving toward President Trump's policies. They're reaching out to the administration. So I don't think this is going to be a big conflict or a demonstration of massive differences between Reform and the Conservatives. If the Conservatives choose to move back to the center left, like we had with David Cameron and Theresa May and Boris Johnson, Rishi Sunak, I think that they risk losing a lot of ground to Reform. If they move to the right, which I think they're doing, and I've, with both the co-chairman of the Conservative Party as well as the official leader of the party, which is Kemi Badenoch, I think they're moving in the right direction. So you could ultimately see a real moving, powerful force of the
Of the
right-leaning
right.
parties here.